There's no doubt that Manos, The Hands of Fate, is one of the worst movies ever released. FreakZone Games, the same developer behind the angry video game Nerd Adventures, have made a loving, tribute to this horror disaster in the form of Manos, The Hands of Fate Director's Cut. The question, though, is the game as bad as the movie it pays homage to, or is it worth your time? The PC version of Manos has been ported over from mobile and is a 2D action game in a deliberately retro fashion. It harkens back to the days of the NES. Many games from those days are remembered as absolute classics, and recapturing that retro feeling in a fresh new game is always a fun and difficult experience. Reviewing this type of game is difficult, and Manos becomes even more difficult for me as FreakZone released a post-launch patch that addressed many of my initial complaints with the game. We'll get to those in a moment, but first I want to talk about the presentation. The visuals are clearly modern, as no NES ever sported a color palette this varied. But they do a great job of harkening back to the old days of limited color palettes and the limitations of tiny memory sizes on cartridges. The characters, levels, and backgrounds are all crisp and unique. Sprites move with a sense of life and character, and it's often fun just to watch one of the zombies shamble across the screen. One major complaint I do have with the game is the grain effect. It can make it very difficult to see in certain levels, as the grain effect magnifies the myopic feeling caused by the narrow sphere of light that surrounds your character in the otherwise pitch-black levels. Fortunately, this effect can be turned off in the options. Some people will like it, and others won't. It's one of those purely subjective things, and I found myself playing with it off most of the time. The story of the game is as simple as the movie. You, your wife, and daughter, and family dog find yourself stranded in the desert after your car breaks down. The Valley Lodge is nearby, and you go to find help. Nonsensical events follow, much like the movie. By no means is it a bad plot. It makes more sense than the original Kirby games, and it certainly matches the game it's based on, which is legendary for inconsistencies between shots, inane dialogue, nonsensical pacing, and a whole host of other issues. Gameplay in Manos is simple, boiling down to running, jumping, and shooting. Initially, I felt that the jumping controls were a bit too floaty, even slightly loose at times. Much to my delight, however, FreakZone has made a few changes to the placement of certain enemies in the levels, and this has eased my frustrations some. While I still feel a slight disconnect with the controls, I feel less punished now when I don't time a jump perfectly and get hammered off the screen by a random enemy hurtling in from out of frame. This isn't to say that I still don't sometimes feel a disconnect with the jump controls. I just feel less like I'm going to die instantly if I do slightly mess up a jump. Speaking of dying, get ready to die a lot. Manos is punishing. Once again, with the initial version of the game, I felt it was punishing for all the wrong reasons, such as the airplane level that took away all your hit points and subjected you to insta-kills. That's since been patched, and I could say it was for the better. On the positive side, Manos has many things I remember fondly from the old NES days. A large part of the levels are pattern-based, meaning that learning a level and the routes of the enemies within the level can allow you to flex your speedrunning muscles and absolutely destroy a stage. Firing your weapon in midair immediately halts your momentum, granting you a bit of control over some of the more awkward leaps of faith Manos demands of you. Exploration is rewarded, as it will often uncover Hands of Fate, which will increase your life bar permanently. And, as an added bonus, health pickups are plentiful, along with shiny gems and coins, which increase your score. Or rather, health pickups are plentiful on normal difficulty. On harder modes, the game is nowhere near as generous, and on nightmare difficulty, you better bring your A-game. This is NES hard at its most punishing worst. Also welcome is the addition of the shotgun pickup. While a more powerful weapon is welcome in its own right, Manos also challenges you to play pixel perfect, as taking damage will downgrade you back to your lowly pistol. It's a simple yet effective way of rewarding precision gameplay. Even more welcome are generous checkpoints. If you've ever played an NES game, especially one regarded as truly NES hard, you'll know why this is a big deal. So where does that leave us? Manos, The Hands of Fate Director's Cut is a strange game. An homage to one of the worst movies ever made. It contains some of the things I hated most about NES games, as well as some of the things I most loved. There are things that I appreciate in its design, and I had many moments of enjoyment while playing it. Cheap deaths can still be found in plenty. The visuals are charming, but for me, marred by that grain effect. And herein lies the real difficulty of this review. I'll make no secret of the fact that when I initially published my written review, I scored Manos a 4.5 out of 10, saying, There are great ideas here, it's just too bad that, like the movie it plays homage to, Manos, the Hands of Fate director's cut is inconsistent, irritating, and not all that enjoyable in the end. With the patch fixes that has since been put into place, however, I feel that I can no longer, in good conscience, keep that score. A few simple yet telling tweaks have made a world of difference for me. While I still feel that there are some inconsistencies in the game, particularly a few rather brutal difficulty spikes, the overall experience is much improved. Still not perfect by no means, but much closer to what I imagined FreakZone's initial vision was. I can now safely rate Manos, the Hands of Fate director's cut, a 6.5 out of 10. Now, if only I could find out who was responsible for that damn screaming noise from the flying skulls and throw them down bottomless pits.